Perfectionism is driven not by high standards, but by anxiety.
So you agree?
Oh, fact. Striving for excellence is not the same as
Yes.
perfectionism.
People who say like, well, but I don't want to lower my standards. It's like, well, you don't have to lower your standards because
No.
that's not what this is about.
And it is so anxiety provoking, not to mention it is the thief of joy. Because there'll always be the 2% that just didn't go as planned. Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. I think you are going to love the conversation I just had with my new friend, Gretchen Rubin. She is one of today's most influential and thought-provoking observers of happiness and human nature. I remember years ago starting to read her books on happiness. So she's known for her ability to convey complex ideas from science to literature to stories from her own life with levity and clarity. She's the author of many best-selling books, such as The Happiness Project, which is the first book that I ever read that she did many years ago. Better Than Before, The Four Tendencies, which have sold millions of copies in more than 30 languages. Her most recent book is Secrets of Adulthood, Simple Truths for Our Complex Lives, which I absolutely loved. It was so much fun talking to her today about all of these. So it's basically a book on aphorisms, which are big ideas put in not a lot of words. And really, it's an accumulation of Gretchen's wisdom that she's gathered over the many years that she's been doing this. And she's such a researcher. She also has a really popular podcast that's great called Happier with Gretchen Rubin. She's also the founder of the award-winning Happier app, which helps people track their happiness-boosting habits, right? So how do we do it better? Basically, how can we be happier in our lives? So I hope that you guys will love this interview with Gretchen Rubin as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. Well, you guys, I'm so excited to welcome my newish pal, Gretchen Rubin, to the Terri Cole Show. Gretchen, welcome.
I'm so happy to be talking to you.
Me too. I've known your work forever, of course, and then we happened to meet at a book launch party, my book launch party, actually, at Vanessa Cornell's house.
Yes.
And then you were nice enough.
Super fun event. Yeah.
Oh my God, that was awesome. And then you were nice enough to do an Instagram Live with me supporting my book. And I was thrilled to be supporting your work because I've really been a big fan for a long time. And I'm sure lots of people say that and you're like, yeah, sure. But I actually have been.
No, I like hearing it. Whether people are sincere or not, it's still nice to hear.
Same. Flowing sunshine, feel free.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm excited to talk about all the things, whatever it is you're lit up about, but I'm super lit up about your new book. So let's discuss Secrets of Adulthood. This is all about simple truths for our complex lives. I had this epiphany in reading this book. Well, different ones, but one about why I was so drawn to your work. And it's funny, I wrote you a note basically saying this, that you're such a wordsmith, always been a great writer, but your ability to be so concise and powerful. And I really didn't know then that what I was really talking about were aphorisms. I did not know. So we're going to get into that, but it's funny. It resonated so deeply with me. So using not a lot of words to convey a simple but powerful, could be life-changing idea or thought. Is that basically how you would describe it?
No, absolutely, because ideas just have more power when they're sort of more succinct and more crisply stated. And it's hard sometimes to really distill a conclusion down to just a sentence or two. But then it's much easier to remember that or think about that or decide maybe you agree or you don't agree with that. But it's easier to hold in our minds if it's short.
Yes. And it also is an absolute skill to be able to do it, right? I mean, we all hear like less is more, but
yes,
to be able to be precisely understood and to be able to say what you want to say succinctly in that way, that is a skill. Anyway, so I want to talk, before we get into the specifics of the book itself, what inspired you to write this book now? Tell us about the book and tell us what inspired you.
Yeah, so Secrets of Adulthood, it's about 200 aphorisms. And an aphorism is it's an insight into human nature. It's an observation. It's a very kind of ancient literary form. So like great, like the ancient Romans, a lot of French aphorists. And the idea is that it's making some general insight into human nature. Now, sometimes you hear things that are folk wisdom or that are proverbs. So something like, you can't push a rope, or a stumble may prevent a fall. These are just proverbs. So we don't remember who said them first. They're just kind of loose pieces of wisdom that are floating around. You're only as happy as your least happy child. You might agree with that. You might disagree with that, but that's folk wisdom. An aphorism is something where you're like, Oscar Wilde said that. Warren Buffett said that. Dolly Parton said that. Julius Caesar said that. Whatever, it's attributed to a specific person. So these are my aphorisms. And as you're very kind to say this about my work, but it is something that I realized that I had been really striving to do for a very long. I was trained in law, so I know what it's like to write long and boring and complicated and unmemorable. So I was like driven to the other extreme.
Right.
And so in a lot of my books, and more consciously, I was trying to really have these kind of moments of distilling. And a lot of times it's really hard because you have to have a very, very clear idea in order to express it clearly, and that's often very hard. And then also, I'm just entering into sort of the empty nest stage of life, which is I'm rebranding as Open Door. My daughters, were leaving the house, and so I thought, I really want to just create a collection of my Secrets of Adulthood and see if I can spare them the lessons that I learned the hard way through time and experience, and just sort of everything, because I have some aphorisms that are just observations. They don't really, they're just like, the tulip is an empty flower. I believe that. I think that's kind of interesting, but it's not very useful. So the Secrets of Adulthood are things that can help you navigate a relationship, or make a tough decision, or figure out how to get something done. So I've been working on these for a very, very long time, and then I pulled them together into this little collection.
Love, love, love. So for you, how did, like, for people who don't know your origin story, like I know you were clerking for Sandra Day O'Connor before you decided to become, or when you decided to become a writer.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit, if you would, just about your background, because I find it really fascinating, your life story that sort of brought you to this moment. And I always was so interested in why you became a happiness expert.
So I started my career in law, and I was clerking for Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. And I have a habit in my life of asking myself rhetorical questions, and this is just something that I always do. So I was out walking around, looking up at the Capitol dome, and I thought to myself, what is interesting to me that's interesting to everybody else in the world? And I thought, well, power, money, fame, sex. And it was like power, money, fame, sex. It was like this one big subject in my mind. And I started researching what seemed to me to be one gigantic subject. And this is something that has happened to me throughout my life. I will get very preoccupied with a subject and do a ton of research and note-taking on it. So I've done this since I was 8 years old. So this is something that's very familiar to me. So I'm like, okay, I'm all interested in what power, money, fame, sex. I'll do all this research. But this time, it just got bigger and bigger. And I was spending all of my free time doing note-taking and research and trying to understand, like, what I thought about power, money, fame, sex. And finally, it occurred to me, I'm doing the kind of thing that a person would do if they were going to write a book. And then I thought, well, maybe I could write that book. So I literally went to a bookstore and got a book called something like How to Write and Sell Your Nonfiction Book Proposal, and follow the directions. So that makes it sound much easier than it was, for sure. But that is basically what happened. While I was finishing up my 40 Ways to Look at JFK, I was stuck on a city bus in the pouring rain, and I didn't have anything to do. And I thought, again, I asked myself a rhetorical question. I thought, what do I want from life anyway? And I thought, I want to be happy. And I realized I didn't spend any time thinking about whether I was happy or whether I thought it was possible to become happier, or if you can become happier, what would you do? What would I do? And I thought, oh, I'll do a happiness project. And that's how I thought of it for myself. But then it just became so big and so interesting. And there was so much that I wanted to learn and so much that I wanted to try in my own life that finally I thought, well, maybe this should be my next book. And so it started just for me. And then I decided to turn it into a book. And then it turns out that happiness is just such this limitless subject. It goes off in so many directions that basically I've been studying different aspects of happiness ever since. So I wrote Better Than Before, which is about the 21 strategies you can use to make or break your habits, because habits are so important for happiness. I wrote Life in Five Senses, because our five senses are such a powerful way to make ourselves happier, healthier, more productive, more creative. So that's how I made my switch and how I got into happiness.
So what was the response? So here you had this very promising law career. You had gone to a very prestigious school. Like, here you are doing this thing. What did your parents at that time, how did people respond to you being like, I'm going to be a writer instead of a lawyer?
Well, I was very, very fortunate because I have to say, to me, the people around me have a big influence on me, for better or for worse. And the thing is, they were very, very encouraging of me taking a big risk. And here's something that made it easier for me than I think it is for a lot of people. It wasn't that I wanted to be a writer. It's that I wanted to write a book called Power, Money, Fame, Sex that I was already researching. So I knew exactly where I wanted to go. And I think a lot of times we know we want to leave, but we don't know where we want to go. And for me, it wasn't even that I just wanted to switch careers. It's like I wanted to do this specific project. And it was like, I have to become a writer in order to do that project. So that I had so much clarity and almost compulsion to do it. And so it was just crystal clear to me what I wanted to be doing. And the thing is, my parents, I had every possible feather in my cap to be a lawyer. I'd been editor-in-chief of the Law Journal. I had won a legal prize. I had clerked on the Supreme Court. Like, these are all the things that a person would want to have. And with writing, I had nothing. I had never been a journalist. I didn't have a byline. I had never published even a short story in a college magazine. I'd majored in English. That was it, right? So I was starting with nothing. And they were like, that's fine. That's great. You should do it. And my father said something to me that I've told people about it, and a lot of people think that it sounds undermining. But actually, it was very encouraging and reassuring to me. Because when I was talking about the first book and I was trying to do it, he said, well, you may not hit it out of the park the first time, darling, but if you want to, you'll get there. And this was very reassuring to me because what it was saying is you don't have to be an instant success in order to think that this was a right or wrong decision.
I would have felt the same as you, though, with what your father said, for sure. Because all of a sudden when you said what he said about you may not hit it out of the park, but if you keep going, you will. There's an expansion in that. Like, this could be a long runway, babe.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes.
As opposed to if you don't do it, then you got to go back to law or whatever it is.
Right. Which is like, well, why don't you go out to Los Angeles for 6 months and see if you can make it as an actor? And if not, like, then you'll go back to whatever.
Let's talk a little bit about sort of it's the Stoics had this way, the I Ching, like there's a whole bunch of different wisdom traditions, I guess maybe we would call them.
Yeah.
That embrace this small words for big and profound ideas, let's say.
Yes.
So what inspired you?
I've always loved that. I have huge, another thing that I've done my whole life is I have these huge collections of quotations. And I've always been drawn to that and have a collection of all of my favorite aphorisms. And so, a lot of the great classical writers, as you say. So I just really wanted to try it myself. It was just the kind of thing where sometimes when you really admire something, then you want to take your hand at it. As a writer, and you know this, you never really know what's going to strike a chord in other people. And it's so interesting. And I don't know about you, but I definitely have had the experience where like a single line will completely revolutionize my thinking or like shine a crazy spotlight on things. And so I hope that my book will do that. And it's going to be so interesting to me to see what people respond to.
Yeah. And interesting that you'll have certain lines that you don't know, but then over and over and over again, people are quoting that line back. And I'm like, So what made this line universally resonate
Yep.
with zillions of people? Like
Yes.
it's, even if it's one you yourself didn't pull out of the book, but people will say, staying on my own side of the street when it comes to boundaries or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And this
Right.
is how they sort of become sayings.
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
it's what's resonating with people.
Yes.
Well, there was so many in here, but I'm just going to talk about a few because I want to, let's just deconstruct them, shall we?
Okay, good.
All right. So working is one of the most dangerous forms of procrastination.
Man, I tell myself this at least at least once a week, if not more. Because there's times where it's not like you're gonna go flop down on a sofa and watch and binge watch a Netflix show, but you'll do work that's not really the work that you need to be doing. Like a writer friend of mine was like, "Oh, I've been kind of experimenting with fonts." And I was like, "To be clear, you are not working. That is goofing off. Like, just because you have your document in front of you does not mean that you are working." And also, and maybe you've experienced this with your book, which is research. A lot of times it's like you think you're working because you're doing research, but you're way off subject. Not that it's not good and valuable to be learning, and if you're interested in something to be following up with it, but you have to understand, like, am I working right now? Or am I just researching things that interest me?
Yep.
Because when you're supposed to be working, you need to be working, usually.
It's so true. And the procrastination, I see myself because I identify as, maybe I'm in recovery from being a workaholic, but I certainly find a lot of refuge and comfort. I'm very comfortable working. And I definitely,
That's another one of my aphorisms, which is that people don't talk enough about how comforting work is. Because I feel like work is very comforting.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, and from a psychological point of view, I would say that it's very comforting when what we're doing, we feel masterful doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? I would find
when we're
work,
in control.
Exactly, because for me, it's less comforting. I just came back from a networker. It was like a therapeutic conference. And it was the first time I was presenting at this conference. And so, all the research, all the prepping, all the planning, none is comfortable for me, right? It's comfortable when it's done. Anything that's highly visible, there's all of this anticipatory, I like to try to call it excitement, but it's really anticipatory anxiety, where you're like, am I going to just fuck it up somehow,
Yeah.
And so I do think that the comfort piece, at least for me, is when I'm doing something that I know I'm good at, that, you know what I mean? Okay, so every single one on this one page that I'm looking at, I identify with. So nothing is more exhausting than the task that's never started.
Yeah, right? It's just, but the postponing those things, they just drain us.
It's just on the never-ending to-do list, and the amount. It's just like if you have a piece of thread on the floor, and you see it, and you're like, yeah, I should pick that up. You walk past it. You see it again. Every time you walk past it, you think, I should really pick up that little thread, because I can see it on the dark floor. There's a light thread. Yeah. I mean, I could walk past that thread 400 times. I'm like, for the amount of time I've thought about that effing thread.
Yes.
Could have just
there's a good proverb for this, which is the stewing is worse than the doing. And I think that's very true.
My God, I'm so into it. Okay. What can be done at any time is often done at no time.
Yes. This is something that I've really learned the hard way, which is things that you're like, well, I can do that anytime. They just slip past us. And so sometimes we have to give something a deadline, or we have to put it on the calendar, because otherwise it just slips and slips and slips and slips. And so I've really gotten much better about, instead of saying like, oh, I should do X, it's like, I should do X this summer, or I should do this X around this holiday, or something that like locks it into a time, because otherwise these things they just slip. Or you're like, well, I can, I can clean out that pantry anytime. Well, it's like, okay, well, you're never going to then.
Right.
Because you've got
and
all
what
this other
do they
stuff.
say? They say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because for me, when I'm really busy, I only have this time to make those 3 phone calls. Mm-hmm. So I actually put it on my calendar, so I do it. I also find that anything that doesn't end up on my calendar
Yes.
is literally not happening.
Yes, I put everything on my calendar for exactly
Same.
that reason.
Love it. All right. I do a lot of work around perfectionism, so I really like this one. Perfectionism is driven not by high standards, but by anxiety.
So you agree?
Oh, fact.
Oh, okay,
Fact.
good.
Because,
Good.
right, if we look at it from the point of view, striving for excellence is not the same
Yes.
as perfectionism.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. And that's
right?
why people who say like, well, but I don't want to lower my standards. It's like, well, you don't have to lower your standards because that's not what this is about.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is so anxiety provoking, not to mention it is the thief of joy. Because there'll always be the 2% that just didn't go as planned.
Yeah.
And if you give that 2% the power to rob your joy, then you're going to be miserable because this is life. It is messy as hell. All of it.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, the ugly. It's all messy. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Oh, and I'm so guilty of this one. One of the worst uses of time is to do something well that need not be done at all.
Yes. So I got my first glimpse into this one. Okay, so I love to clear clutter. This is like, I find that to be relaxing. And my sister is one of these people who's clutter blind. Like, she just doesn't even see clutter. Every cabinet door is open. She's got junk mail from 20 years ago lying on her counter.
Yeah.
And so I went in and we were going to do this big clutter clearing. And so at that time she had all these statements that were coming. She's in the union, the Hollywood Union, and so she had all these statements. And so we were pulling them out of her mail. We were finally dealing with her mail, and she was like, "Okay, what I could do is I could get notebooks, and then I could punch holes in them, and then I could put them in." And I could have it like, by year, and then it'd be all organized and everything. And I said, but do you ever look at these? And she said, clearly she didn't because they were all lying there unopened. And she said, no, I never do look at them. And I said, if you didn't have them, is there a way to find out the information if you need it? And she said, yeah, you could just log into your account and I'm sure I could get it online in some way if I needed to. So I said, all this goes into recycling. We had to shred it because it had,
Yeah.
But why would you but she was just about to embark on 3-hole punching and putting into notebooks after having put them in chronological order of a bunch of stuff that she never looked at, And so it's like the worst use of time is to do something well that you don't need to do at all. And it's it's surprisingly hard to recognize it when you're like, do I need to be doing this at all?
Okay, I love this one because it reminds me of my relationship. When a decision matters a great deal to someone else, but doesn't matter much to you, let them have their way.
Mm-hmm. Are you good about doing that?
Well, Vic and I we always will like say on a scale of, for you, what is the importance for me coming to this black tie thing with you, whatever it is. And if he'll say, it's like a 9. I'm like, I'm there. Okay, I'm buying a new dress. Can't wait. If he's like, it's like a 3, Terra. I don't even want to go, so don't worry about it. Like, I don't. So what it does is it lets us know what is important to the other person. We don't make assumptions. We ask the question, do you want me there? If the answer is yes, it's a 9, I want you there. There's no question. Whatever I had planned, I'm not doing. I'm doing that thing. Because if it's a 9 to him, and he's always a 10 to me, right? Like meaning I always want him to be happy. So I feel like that's a good question to ask, or that's a good it's a good aphorism.
No, and that's a very good, very quick way to communicate that, like to just reach an understanding of the other person. That's a great idea. I've never used that. I think that's a terrific way to get right at that.
Yes, just shorthand where
Right.
we're valuing what the other one wants. We both know that, but you don't have to have a long conversation about it. This is the thing. I know you guys are married for a long time. You're married, I think, even longer than us. How long are you guys together?
30 years.
Yeah, so we're together 27. But you do get a shorthand. If it's good, you keep it good by communicating and all those things.
So the book that I'm going to write, Secrets of Adulthood, is my book now. But my next book is going to be about the empty nest, which as I said, I'm rebranding as Open Door.
Love it.
And here's one thing that is fascinating to me. So one of the things that everybody agrees is sort of a social trend, and you might think it's for better or for worse, but that parents and children are closer now. They have warmer relationships. They're in more constant contact.
Yep.
And when when parent generation went to college, it was sort of like you just got dropped off, and then maybe you called your parents once a week or whatever. But
Seriously.
it was you didn't. And I'm now that I'm working on this book, I finally asked my mother like 6 weeks ago, how did you experience the empty nest? It literally had never crossed my mind to think about how my mother had navigated that transition. It just never occurred to me. But parents and children are closer now, right? And parents are very focused on their children's experience and like how are they supporting them, and they're monitoring them. And anyway, there's all the, colleges now have all these groups that help parents manage it and whatever and interface with the college.
Right.
So it started me thinking, well, we're worried about the children. Are the children worried about the parents? Mm-hmm. So my daughter is a freshman, and so I said to her, ask around, ask your friends. Do they think about their parents' experience? Are they worried about their parents? Mm-hmm. And she said a lot of them are worried about their parents. They're worried that their parents are going to get a divorce. Somebody said, my mom needs a hobby. I'm her hobby. And I keep telling her she needs to find something else to do that's not me. Somebody said, my father is really mean to my mom, but he's nicer when I'm there. So I'm worried about not being there as a buffer. So these are children that are very aware of their parents' experiences. So I think that it's a lot of responsibility for a child to worry about a parent's happiness. Just like people say, and you may not agree with it, but people will often say, you're only as happy as your least happy child. Well, I think children feel like you're only as happy as your least happy parent. So we should try to be happy as parents, just because otherwise it's, you know what I mean? It's this.
That's a world of codependency, though, Gretch, is what we're really describing. Mm-hmm. And that whole thing about you're only as happy as your least happy kid, you're right.
Such a burden.
I don't subscribe to it.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't mean that when any one of my adult children, who all are parents on their own, are struggling, right? That it isn't at some point, somewhere, always on my mind. It is. Mm-hmm. But I don't give it the power. Mm-hmm. Because I also know they have a right to be sovereign even in their struggle. And I'm here. Vic and I are here. If you want to come visit, great. If you need help financially, yes. If you, whatever the thing is. But it's the same way that your life, Gretch, was yours to figure out. My life was mine to figure out. I appreciate that my parents dropped me off at college and was like, good luck. It never entered my mind.
See you at Christmas or whatever.
See you. Yeah. It also never entered my mind. I knew I wasn't moving back to my house after I graduated college. I moved into literally a laundry room in a house in Syosset, Long Island for $200 a month with a bunch of friends. Like those adventures, growing those muscles of tenacity and stick-to-itness and just figuring it out, your flexibility. That is a gift that I see has absolutely positively influenced my ability to just be a baller in life. Like you're like, take risks. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Like what's the worst that's going to happen? Mm-hmm. And listen, I don't know how different I would be if my parents were different, if I was a different age. I mean, we were raised in a different time, in a different culture. But I do think that you wrote a piece in The Atlantic, I think it was, about the open door policy rather than the empty nest syndrome. Yeah. And I loved it so much. I loved the reframe. I think I wrote you a note on that too. Yes. Anyway, so I'm so excited that this is your next project. I think it's going to be wonderful. I want to leave us because I'm feeling like we're running out of time, but I want one last thing from the book, and then I want people to find out where they can find you.
Great.
So the end of this chapter ends with, when uncertain about how to proceed, make the choice that allows you to choose the bigger life, step into the future, live in an atmosphere of growth, deepen or broaden your relationships, put your values into the world.
Yeah, because I feel like one of the challenges in life is a lot of times you're like, the pros and the cons are equally weighted. I can't see my way forward. Like I can't figure out a heuristic to help me decide. And so because I have that, I've developed sort of these aphorisms to try to figure out, like, because a lot of times you can't decide. Like we couldn't decide whether or not to get a dog, or like my family really wanted to get a dog and I couldn't decide, because to me the pros and the cons felt very equally weighted. But then when I said, well, let's choose the bigger life, it was obvious getting a dog was the bigger life. Or like step into the future. It's like Should I learn how to use this new platform? Well, I don't want to. It'll make me feel insecure. I hate, I don't like learning new things. I'm not techie, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, well, would that help you step into the future? It's like, yes, it would.
Yep.
Or then, are you putting your values into the world? And that's a huge part of happiness is, do we feel like our life reflects our values? And so sometimes you do something and you're like, well, I don't really particularly feel like doing it, but it is going to help me put my values into the world. And that's something that's going to be probably the right decision.
Right. Oh, I love it so much. All right, Gretchen, where can people find you?
Okay, well, if you can go online, I have a website, GretchenRubin.com, where you can read more about all my books. I'm on like a lot of social platforms, also Gretchen Rubin. I have a podcast called Happier with Gretchen Rubin and my sister, who I mentioned. We do that together, and it's all about how to be happier, healthier, more productive, more creative. It's very practical. Very fun. And I love to connect with listeners and readers about insights or questions or observations or resources.
Well, I super appreciate you and your big, beautiful brain. You guys, you know where to find Gretchen. Go find her. Go get this book. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will do this again.
Oh, it was so much fun talking to you. Thank you.